Here are 3 different ways that I have saved my AI chat history for my users in Bubble apps that I'm creating. We've got context window, we've got follow-up prompt, and we've got RAG using Pinecone. I'm going to dive in the pros and cons for each of those. But before I go any further, we wouldn't be able to create videos like this without our members. Tired of searching YouTube for Bubble tutorial videos? When you become a Planet No Code member, you get access to our complete video library. That's content you won't find on YouTube. It's hundreds of Bubble tutorial videos plus 4 of our courses. Learn about a particular Bubble topic just by searching for it, or use our custom trained AI to ask questions specific to your project, receive detailed answers, and recommended videos. So with access to hundreds of Bubble tutorial videos, courses, and an AI assistant that learns about the app that you're building, becoming a Planet No Code member is a bit of a no-brainer. Click the link in the description to sign up today. Let's start with context window. When I started recording videos like this, it really was quite limited. It started off at about 4,000 tokens and it has just skyrocketed since then. If we take a look at the latest models, so even the most intelligent ones, kind of the flagships, we're now touching 200,000 tokens in the context window. Google's most latest one is now 1 million tokens. Here, though, are some things that you need to consider. Firstly, there is very recent research emerging that even if you were to supply 1 million token context window to Google Gemini. Now, obviously, this is not their latest model, but it's still recently published research. There is a dip in the middle. There does seem to be a behavior, at least of AI models from the last year, that lose interest or lose recollection of data that goes in the middle. So just because you can fill out the context window doesn't mean that you're going to get the best results. Second thing to remember then, of course, is cost. It can really quickly add up, especially if you're using a model where you have to pass in each part of the conversation so far. So there's almost this exponential growth. By the time that you're on the 6th message that the user has sent, then double that because there's the user and the assistant messages. You're then sending 12 messages. Next time they send a message, it would be 14 messages and so on. Your cost is going to go up the more that your users engage with your app. And lastly, on context windows, although not directly a context window, I encountered an issue with Claude's API a few months ago, which exposed that there is a hard limit of how many messages you can send. Now, I have just done a search to try and find that limit. Maybe it has been removed, but it used to be the case, and it might still be the case, that you could only send, I think it was 1,000 messages. So it didn't even matter how many tokens each message was or the sum of those messages. It would just return an error when you went above that limit. It's those limitations that would move us on to our second method, which is follow-up prompt. And this is what I've used in our most recent release of our No Code Builders Academy. What do I mean by a follow-up prompt? Well, we use a good but also expensive AI model to actually compose our answers, to gather all of the relevant videos and respond with a highly detailed response. But once I save the assistant response to the database, I run a second AI prompt in the background, and that is using a much cheaper model, and I do supply the whole conversation there each time, and it costs me like 0.02 cents to do so each time. It's dead cheap. How did I arrive at the prompt to do that? Well, I just asked AI. I asked GPT-5, is there a framework that has emerged as an effective set of questions and AI can ask a list of messages in a conversation history to reduce tokens but limit loss of meaning and detail? And it gave me a number of different frameworks. There's role, intent, and constraint. There's dialogue to knowledge, distillation, task, state, action, result, compression, decision orientation, summarization, query focus summarization. And then it recommends that you start combining them. And so that basically just led me to the point where I said, here's what I'm trying to do. What is the best for an AI assistant in a learning management system? And it does an explanation, blah, 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 and it extracts it out. And if I just go all the way down to the right structure of response, it then basically returned me this structure, which is role, task, state, learner profile, last action, results, decision, open question, next step, suggestions. So every single time one of our members asks a question in our learning management system, in our AI assistant, we are basically generating an up-to-date profile of them based on their chat history, which is then fed into each follow-up request that they make. So we know if they are continuing to struggle on certain topics. We know if their app is a CRM, for example, that they're building. That gets carried into each conversation. We would even know if they were building a CRM and then they asked a question about a mobile app. I think that this is a pretty cool, inexpensive solution. So that is follow-up prompt. Last is using RAG, which for most people, if you arrive at the decision that you're going to use RAG, you would come down and using a service like Pinecone. So let me give a quick explainer on Pinecone. Amongst other things, Pinecone is a service that allows you to build an index of vectors. The benefit of using vectors over, say, a more traditional table, which is kind of what we've used in web development for years now, is semantic meaning. Vectors basically identify whether words have a similar meaning, whereas before, if you think about like a keyword search, you'd have to match like the exact arrangement of letters or very closely in order to get relevant results back. What a vector search does is it understands that two words that are spelled completely differently, like cat and dog, actually sit fairly close to each other. But it would know that the word kitten actually sits closer to the word cat. So it is an amazing innovation in how we can retrieve only relevant data. So the methodology here is that you could do it for every message or every pairing of messages, like the user message out, the assistant message back, is that you generate a record in your Pinecone database. And so they would say you upsert text. Now, here are some key lessons to learn if you're getting started in Pinecone. One is that if you were to just look at the general talk on the internet about embeddings models, embeddings is how you go from a sentence in text to a load of numbers. That's your embeddings. And it's those numbers that get compared. That's so your line of text that you submit gets compared with the lines of text that you submitted previously to Pinecone, both in their vector, in their numbered form, and then you get back the most relevant results. So if you are using Pinecone and you've begun learning about embeddings, this is where I maybe put a foot wrong, and I'm not going to rework what I've done, but I would definitely change it in the future. You will have discovered that OpenAI provides two text embeddings models, text embeddings 3 small and text embeddings 3 large. The difference here being cost and speed. If you're interested, rerun our LMS on text embeddings 3 small because I felt like the difference was marginal and I wanted to really maximize on speed. But here's what I wish I'd known is that Pinecone has got its own embeddings models. So I've now created a situation where I've added in an extra step every single time I want to go through this process, which is that I first have to make an API request to OpenAI and get embeddings from OpenAI. Now that is very quick and it is very cheap. I have to use the upsert vectors. I can't just send text straight to Pinecone because I'm using a third party, a separate embeddings model. If I had used one of Pinecone's own embeddings models, I could just send the text straight to Pinecone. Now, you could find all sorts of comparisons because there are many companies that provide different embeddings models, each saying that they're better for particular things. Because it also means that when I want to do a search, I then have to turn my search query into embeddings, not with Pinecone, but with OpenAI. And then I send through the OpenAI embeddings, the vector data looks just like this. That goes over, and then I get back my results from my Pinecone index. If I had used the Pinecone embeddings model, I could just send the text to Pinecone. But that's not all on how I've kind of created more work for myself, is that the power of using a vector database is your semantic search. That's the meaning that I was explaining a moment ago. But traditional search uses a lexical search. So that's if two words are basically spelled the same. Here's where that becomes relevant. Let's say I have some nouns or like a company name that is not going to be, it's not well known enough that it's going to be in these embeddings models. Let's say that company name is also a word that in its own right means something. For example, Bubble. Now, I would say Bubble is probably big enough that it's included in the embeddings models. But I found that semantic search falls down when keyword search in that instant would have been a better solution. So that's why Pinecone provides a hybrid search, which is then the blending together of the semantic and the lexical. But Hybrid search is only available with their own integrated embeddings models. If I wanted to run a lexical search alongside a semantic search, I would actually need two separate indexes. One, which is set up to use my OpenAI embeddings model, and then the other one, which is just basically a keyword lexical search. Those are my three different approaches for how to handle historical conversational awareness with an AI chatbot that I'm building with bubble.io. If you've got other solutions, I'd love to hear them down in the comments. And of course, if you've got questions, you can post them in the comments, but you can also head over to our website and ask questions there.